All right, my friends, I'm really excited to be sharing the interview with Coach Stephen Thomas, also known as the UK Carnivore. He has amazing accolades as a specialist practitioner in nutrition and sports nutrition and pain management and exercise and health coaching, blood work. He's a phlebotomist. He's been a coach with Steak and Butter gal Bella, and also Rivero Health with Sean Baker. So Coach Stephen Thomas, also known as the Carnivore, has a BS in physiology and health sciences, as well as a background in sport and conditioning science and the physiological aspects of athletic development. As a specialist practitioner in obesity and diabetes and a qualified phlebotomist, Stephen has helped countless people achieve their health goals. His qualifications as a phlebotomist gave him the knowledge and skills to draw blood safely and efficiently, and specialist practitioner status in obesity and diabetes means that he has the expertise to help manage these conditions. Personally, Stephen gave up a high-carb, skim milk, orange juice lifestyle despite 50 years of not smoking or drinking, working out 3 times a week and running 3 times a week. He still found himself fat, pre-diabetic, needing a colonoscopy, and with a coronary artery calcium score of 639 before making the switch to carnivore. Thanks, Stephen, for joining us. First of all, thank you for joining me. And, I've learned much from you over the, I don't know, it hasn't been that long, really. A couple of years, maybe 2 to 3 years at most.
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah, through Steak and Butter Gang, I think you met me, didn't you?
Steak and Butter Gang with Bella and the gang. And I've learned so much, and I'm so grateful you're here. Maybe you can start up by telling everyone a little bit about yourself. I'll do a little read of your bio a little bit later, but it's always nice to hear some stuff that where you at and how did you get into this crazy keto carnivore space?
Okay, and where are we live to at the moment then, Robert?
Well, we're actually not live. We're recording. We're just recording today. Yeah. I don't know. It's so I don't set them all up. Jake does, and sometimes I like the live. But you know what I've learned? Sometimes they're good, but sometimes they're a little distracting because I want to focus on your story, and at the same time I'm trying to read, and so
Yeah, it's only because I noticed the little live up there, and I thought, oh, hello, we are live.
Oh no, we're recording. You're right. It does say live. We're live recording, but it's not live to the world yet.
Right.
We're going to release you eventually, very soon.
Sure.
I can't hold you back.
Well, you want it nice and clean, don't you? So I'll leave a little gap for the edit, and then I'll get into the question.
Yeah. So, first question is, let's see, Coach Stephen. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this keto and carnivore and health and wellness space?
Yes, actually, Robert, I want to tell you the whole story because I think I've never done that. And I think the context is pretty interesting. And hopefully it's going to be quite cool for you to hear it, because my health journey started when I was a child. And unfortunately, my parents bought into the low fat, skim milk, grains. Meat's not great for you. I mean, also not particularly wealthy after a problem. My dad, my real dad, died very early, and then my stepfather came over, who was my real dad's brother, and he came to Australia. And because in those days, if you remarried, you lost your pension and everything. My mum basically lost all her income, and he got caught out with the same sort of thing. So it was a really horrible time. Okay, so I'm going to tell you something that you will not believe. Actually, I got to the point where I was so hungry, I was actually eating my wallpaper off my bedroom wall. Yeah,
it did have some starch in it, didn't it?
It did, yes. Okay.
Because they use starch, I think, as the paste for wallpaper. Maybe, I don't know. That's interesting.
Awful, really. Yeah. So. Yeah, pretty surprising. But that was a particular, not all my life, but that happened for a little period where we was having some problems with money coming from Australia and all this sort of stuff, because my stepdad, who was, like I say, my real dad's brother, there was a big transition where he wasn't getting any money and my mum wasn't getting any money. So anyway, that was
hardships in life.
Yeah, real hardship. Yeah. I don't look back at that time unhappy at all. I only realized that was a big thing recently, actually. If I found a picture of my bedroom and there was a massive, great big bare bit where the wallpaper used to be, and wow, I used to eat that. Anyway, but the point being, actually, but my mother was very much into the skim milk and the brand and all that, and she died very young of colon cancer, which allegedly is when you eat meat. And I mean, I know this now, but looking back, I wasn't aware of all these things that I now know. So anyway, that had a long-term impact. I've got British teeth anyway, but boy, teeth that are not given protein and fats and things to chew when you're younger. So I've got typical British teeth. And but I was pretty fit, pretty active at school. I was the 800-meter holder. I was pretty good at soccer, or football, as it should be called, by the way.
Yes.
You use your feet.
We just don't know it in the West, do we? We'll straighten up eventually.
Yeah, eventually. So so I was a semi-pro footballer. The reason for this précis is because, as Coach Raymond pointed to me when I first met him, wow, your life actually is doing all the allegedly right things. So I was very active. I was in the soccer team. I actually went semi-professional. I was eating all the, allegedly right things. And at 23, I did a bodybuilding show, really into fitness. I can remember reading magazines about, some bodybuilders are trying high fat, and immediately dismissing it. I was absolute, washed at that point. It was granary bread, and it was skim milk, and it was freshly squeezed orange juice, and it was all that stuff, and don't touch red meat. So I did that for many, many, many years of my life. I had an interesting life. Deaf at 23. I wear hearing aids. I have to lip read. I have a big load of kit here to help me hear. But this isn't a negative story. I really enjoyed my life. I got on national TV. I did stand up about being deaf. So none of this, Robert, many people know. I did some mainstream TV. I was a bodybuilder in Born Ultimatum, and Paddy Considine's Standing, and Gary Oldman Standing on the Dark Knight, and all this sort of stuff. So I had a pretty interesting life. But what was happening, I was eating these great foods, and I was also training to be a personal trainer. So in my 30s, when I come to the end of my 30s, I realized I really loved health and fitness, and I wanted to help other people. Became a personal trainer, and then I did an advanced certificate. I mean, that ended up being pretty good, teaching and training someone in the Olympics and all this sort of stuff. So it was great again. So I was doing the right things, and then I get into my 40s, and I realize, well, firstly, I want to know more about what's going on, because I was running 3 times a week, doing 10 miles at a really good pace. These medals are for running, and I was getting tubby, and I wasn't eating any fat. I was doing all these excellent things, and my health was going out, and I was starting to get, which I now know were cataracts that had to be resolved before I was 50, which is glycation, now, but I'm trying to give you the sort of linear story. So when I was doing the advanced personal training, I decided also to get into obesity and diabetes, to be a real specialist practitioner in that. That's when the flag started raising up. So I remember doing the bit about diabetes and talking about the medications, because to be on the GP referral, general practitioner referral list, you have to know all about the interactions with all the different medications, how they work. And I can remember, and many people have heard this who have followed me on. I can remember in the lecture me putting my hand up and saying, you keep telling us to do the dosage of insulin in relation to carbohydrates. Why don't we just stop shoving them into our mouths? They seem to be the problems, which was laughed out of the class. Of course you need carbohydrates and all that. And it became really obvious that wasn't true. So the more I looked into it, and of course, being me, I'm very sort of qualified in many ways. I've already got an honours degree in English. Went in to do my science degree, my honours science degree in physiology and health sciences. I also wanted to be qualified as a phlebotomist, because not a control freak, but I just really like to know stuff. So I trained to be a phlebotomist as well, because I wanted to see the bloods, and I wanted to basically, lock it all in and understand it from many different angles and really know the stuff and see it with my own eyes what was going on. And I was pre-diabetic. There you go. The first time I did a blood test, that really sort of should have shocked me, but I was expecting it because of the knowledge I was now gaining. It also made sense of why I was getting fat. It's also making sense that I had lower left quadrant pain. I was in a hospital for colonoscopy, and obviously with my mother having, colon cancer and dying from that, and my father dying young, I can remember sitting in that ward thinking, boy, if genetics really do play a big role, which I'm leading you on to a question later, this is it. I've had my chips. I'm gone because I'm in this colonoscopy. I'm in absolute agony. I'm getting tubbier. I'm getting pre-diabetic. Everything's going wrong. My skin was, massive, great big flare-ups with stress and all this sort of stuff. Athlete's foot was, and I know that sounds like nothing, but again, it's an indicator of something's wrong. Athlete's foot, I'd had it for 30 years. That was getting even worse. And wow, all of this was just going completely and utterly south. And the penny just dropped that it was the carbohydrates. Oh, and the other thing was I had a coronary artery calcium scan, which was 639. Not the worst, but certainly not the best. Puts me in the sort of alleged risk category. Literally every test I've had in my 40s, I should be dead now. I'm 58 now. So I've managed to outlive all the predictions, and I found keto. Right now, one of the influencers that seems to divide people, but I love him and I don't care. Yes, he makes some big mistakes, but I saw Dr. Berg and I thought, this guy is very good, and bite-sized information, pleasant, whatever you think of it. Some of his information about diabetes in particular, particularly good as a gateway. All right, I would say that. I would not say that you can go much further, but definitely very good. So I thought, well, I'll try low carb, see how that goes. Of course, that was literally like a penny dropping moment. How amazed I felt. So much weight dropped off me, water weight. So many things started to get better. I couldn't believe it that this low carb diet was so good. I'd actually had moments of seeing photographs recently, and there's shirts I used to love wearing, and I can remember because I couldn't control my weight and I couldn't fit into them anymore, I threw them out. I absolutely regret it so much. I love these shirts. And all these little things were all resolving because my body composition started to improve. I just felt better and better. And then I saw Ken Berry, who was very good, a few other influences. I didn't know Joe Rogan, didn't know Sean Baker, never heard of Jordan Peterson, and all this little UK lad here who doesn't know what's going on in the world. And I just went from low carb to keto because that seemed logical, and sort of on a parallel track with Dr. Ken Berry, who at that point met him online. I didn't meet him personally, but I encountered him online. He was telling people to eat your greens. I'm like, okay, but I don't like them. But I will do this. But the more I took them out, the better I felt. And then I think he had the same journey.
Yep.
Just coincidental that he started to levitate towards, or gravitate, I should say, towards carnivore. And then I got to 55 and I thought, well, these are great, but I think I could go further. So I'll do the 30-day challenge and I'll just see how I get on. By this point, I'd seen Sean Baker and I'd seen Joe Rogan. I'd seen Jordan Peterson and Michaela Peterson. Sorry, you're not in there, Robert, but these are the people I saw at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did it for 30 days. And wow, the difference is incredible. Now, I get people that don't necessarily want to take that step because keto compared to what I was in my 40s, no comparison. I mean, keto was way better than that. And low carb was way better than that. But I promise you, the way better from carnivore to keto has got to be experienced to be believed. And of course, I had all the people around me saying, well, what about your veg, and your fruit and all this? You must need all that. And I was thinking, well, I don't think I do. And the more I'm studying this, the more I realize that fruit is not the fruit anyway. It's not natural. It's way too much sugar. all the anti-nutrients in veg. So basically, I went carnivore for 30 days, decided that this was my calling. I really needed to do some coaching online and sort of, I think Ken said something that just resonated with me. I could be a doctor, he said, and I could see like 30 people a day, and I can go online in a half an hour. I can talk to 3 million people. And I thought, the online is the thing to do. I hate being online. I really don't like seeing myself. I don't think many people like seeing themselves, hearing themselves. But so I did that. I went on to Meet RX to be qualified as a carnivore coach and a fasting coach. And that was really good. I mean, Sean was fantastic. All the guests were really good. So then you get exposed to a lot of really interesting influencers. This was back in the day when Paul Saladino was actually a proper carnivore, and so it was a long time ago now. It's 3.5 years ago.
Right.
Think.
Not that long, but a long time in our space. Yes,
in this space,
it changes fast.
It's very fast. And then about 2 years ago, I followed Raymond from Rex and went into the Steak and Butter gang with Bella there, who's quite a big influencer.
Yes,
right.
huge.
I'm quite disappointed that I didn't encounter a lot of the people I now talk to during my journey, but there you go, that's life. So I was basically following Ken Berry, Dave Feldman. I found very interesting. I know he's on a keto, he's not really carnivore. Ben Bickman, those sort of people. But all of the things that I've been qualified in, it doesn't matter with real world experience. When we spoke, when you did an interview on my channel, you were talking what training medical school, which certainly doesn't relate to what you actually now know in the world. That's exactly the same here. I mean, the obesity and diabetes, the general practitioner or specialist practitioner status, I get more results following carnivore 10 times than people that want to stick to the wrong way of eating, really.
What is your primary practice today? Is it online coaching? And as an online coach, do you still need to maintain those same practice guidelines as you did if you were in a clinic doing your nutritional and guidelines in physical and health and wellness?
Well, I always make it clear I'm not a doctor. I always do the disclaimer, even in Bella's meetings, I say it's not one-to-one when it's an online meeting, but when it's, when it is one-to-one and I've got the health and activity questionnaire and all that sort of stuff, the bloods come with comments from the doctors. And then you can still interpret, people want to know, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Why do I have fasting glucose? Why has that got a flag? So you're not reading, any of this other than information, really. You're not
right.
Say, well, it shows this. I don't diagnose and I don't prescribe because that's
but your knowledge and experience has given you far more than so many other physicians, doctors, and healthcare practitioners in this space. How do you work with the doctors in the space, and how do they listen and learn from this?
Well, I tend to be the person that talks to the client, and then they go back to the nurse practitioner. They go back to their doctor armed with studies or a bit of research or different kind of things, and it's pretty successful. I think yes, you get a little bit of pushback from doctors, but it's very hard because I just give information that's factual.
Are you finding anyone that's beginning to open up as they're seeing the success of their patients lose weight and diabetes go away and their drugs go away?
Yeah, but it's a bit like your standard of care. Their hands are tied. That's the problem. And I always explain this. I say, yeah, it could be incompetence, but it's more likely, paying the rent and paying the mortgage and not being in the position to lose your license. If you have cholesterol of a certain level, depending on what part of the world you're in, there are guidelines that if it's over a certain level, you must do this thing. You must follow this procedure. which is not good for health, is it? It's not. It's not very individual, and it's not related to studies. It's related to money. Really, that's the saddest thing about it.
Well, what are your thoughts on studies and misinformation regarding to studies?
Well, it makes me pull my hair out, actually,
Mm.
because I mean, when I did my science degree, you learn about studies and you learn about bias and you learn about confirmation bias and conflicts of interest. And I will name check someone like Bart Kay, who will talk about studies left, right, and centre in real detail. I've got the statistical qualification, but I've got the mathematical brain doing a STEM, STEM-based degree, and the studies are manipulated. You know, when you look at studies, then obviously they're not causal. When they're just looking at associations, and they certainly manipulate them and adjust the data and flatly sometimes ignore the data. You know, if you look at the NHANES study, I think it's 1999 to 2014 for the LDL, categoric. Out of 16, they looked at 19 studies for LDL as a alleged causal or risk for heart disease. Out of those 19, 16 absolutely flat, did not prove that whatsoever. And I will give the researchers the benefit of the doubt here, because they did pretty much say it does seem that if higher cholesterol, higher LDL cholesterol, you will live longer. And there's a very clear graph. Now, this was recently shared by Ken Berry, this graph, and I've used it many times to say to people, these are the facts. I mean, this is a huge data set, and there's also another one, which is CDC, World Health Organization, which has got millions of data points, I think from 164 countries, and it backs up the fact that lowering your cholesterol seems to be deleterious and lead to worse health outcomes. Basically, you die. Your chances of dying go up.
So a healthy diet, is there such thing as a labeled healthy diet, do you think?
And well, there's an appropriate diet. There's no one size fits all, because we're all different. But I would definitely say carbohydrates are not part of that. We don't need them. They're not essential. They seem to be very problematic for most people. I certainly think fruit is problematic than people like to believe. I've done a couple of videos on how they're stored, and many people are surprised that the supermarket apple might have been a year and a half since it was picked, because it's in a controlled atmosphere and it's not fresh. And then when you look at nutrients, they don't last for more than 7 days, even in the controlled atmosphere. So these fruits that are allegedly healthy, part of a healthy diet, are just sugar. So I think there's variations on the carnivore diet of the healthy. You know, I think fish can be included. I think eggs are pretty good for most people. Some people have a intolerance. Dairy, again, is problematic for some people. So there's no one size fits all. But I certainly think there is a much narrower field than the food pyramid, which is completely not a healthy diet.
When we use the word carbohydrate, what are we talking about? Maybe we could just be a little more scientifically
sugar molecules,
explanatory.
basically. Yeah,
Right. But when we say sugar and carbohydrate, it's sometimes a difficult thing to understand what that means, because we don't buy sugar and carbohydrate. We buy food, and food is either an animal-based food or a plant-based food. Maybe for those listening and watching, you can give us a little better direction of what they should be thinking about.
Yeah, well, if you look at your muscle, it's got some glycogen in there, which is just glucose, which is in a long strand, and that's our storage form of energy. Okay, so it is a form of energy. Now, if you look at a potato, their storage form of energy is the potato, and that is starch, what we call starch. So that's long forms of long polymers, basically. Basically it's all glucose just strung together. And so what happens when you cook that, you break those bonds and you break the starch down into glucose or whatever is your derivative, because there's different types of sugars. But in the end, they're all pretty much the same. They all break down to the same. So you've got fructose and you've got galactose and you've got glucose. And it depends what your body does with them. So, for instance, fructose tends to be metabolized in the liver more than it does, say, glucose. And people think of glucose as sort of akin to just white table sugar. And it isn't. I mean, we have stored glucose, which is made by a liver. So you can have a non-carbohydrate substrate, which can then become glucose. But that's the liver making it for you as a demand-driven thing. So your brain, for instance, would require some glucose. You don't have to eat glucose. You don't have to eat sugar. You don't have to eat carbohydrate to get that glucose to your brain. So we use about 5 grams every hour, the brain does, of glucose, which is coincidentally pretty much what happens when you look at gluconeogenesis. So I'm not one of these people that thinks you can live without glucose, because you can't. But you don't have to eat it. I think that's the definition. So when you hear influencers saying you need carbohydrates, yeah, but you don't need to eat. Your body will make them in a demand process. So if you look at your blood sugar levels, we need a blood sugar level of about 1 teaspoon in 5 liters of blood. So that's what most people do.
Not much sugar.
No, it's not. When you look at volume, which I much prefer, thanks, Robert, for saying that, because that's why I always say that, because people think, well, I'm 5.6 or I'm 100, Well, what's that mean? What does that actually mean? And when I say, well, it's about a teaspoon of sugar in 5 liters of blood, which is, the average person, they're like, well, that's not much. Yeah.
Does the human body know the difference between sugars from fruits or vegetables or honey?
No, it's the
same.
They're the same.
So when we speak of carbohydrates, we're talking about sugars from plants, because essentially carbon dioxide plus sunlight and water makes a long chain carbon sugar particle, which all comes from plants. So if you eat meat, are you eating much sugar?
Not really. No. I mean, the name there gives you what you just said: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, carbohydrate.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, when you eat meat, you're looking more at amino acids and water, for instance. So if you've got a ribeye and you chow down on a ribeye, you're looking more at proteins and fats. There may be a small amount of carbohydrate in there, but it's minimal, absolutely minimal.
Got it. And how about so you're saying that ultimately the plants, the fruits and the vegetables are not required, because carbohydrates are not required, but we eat them, and it is the label of the healthy diet. And it's such a hard thing for any of us to lose that story that the brain keeps on telling you, but I need this. How do we change that paradigm and help people lose the I need this, this is healthy for me?
Well, I think being full, eating the right things, because if you're craving, there's many different ways of looking at it. I think, the study with mice and sugar water compared to water, they're prepared to be shocked to get the sugar water. So these mice, they're not being indoctrinated by the mainstream media. Okay, so I want to get that out there. This is a physical response. It's a dopamine hit. This is happening. So the mainstream media don't help, by the way. So this desire to get that pleasure center of your brain actually excited is there. It's hardwired, sadly, for an addicted person. And when functional MRIs, you can see this. You can see that when they have that sugar, it lights up. It's an understanding of how the body tries to protect you, and this explains it. Addiction is the synapse and the receptor for that signal actually retracts when the brain feels like you're doing too much damage. And this is why you need more and more of it, because to get the same hit, you have to pump more in, because the receiving end is not absolutely wanting that. So you have to have more and more and more, and you addictive personality, and you start thinking, well, I just have 20 grams of carbs. Before you know it, it's 400, because you're feeding into that. Well, the way to stop that is to replace it with something that is equally pleasurable, but in a different fashion. So if you're full of meat and fats, or animal proteins and animal fats, your cravings tend to go down because you're satisfied. So if you took that mouse, for instance, that was going for the sugar water, if you gave that mouse a replacement, something else it could try that would really like and make it actually full and not feel like I need sugar, or something to do, a threat, even something to distract it, it would not act the same way. You're looking at this way of eating, and it's just borne out. I mean, I've been doing this now long enough to be able to say I've got over 500 examples of this, of people that have told me they're addicted. There's no way they can give up bread. There's no way they can give this up. No way they can give that up. And they do, because they're feeling full. And I'm not one of these sort of, I don't like people to think in a negative way. I don't like them to wake up and think, right, today I'm not going to eat fruit. Today I'm not going to have sugar. I just say, wake up and say, right, today I'm going to be carnivore. Today I'm going to eat my meat. I'm going to eat fat, and be very positive and do all the little things around it. The way you talk to yourself, you think about things, trying to give you practical things, actually, Robert, making sure that your kitchen is stocked up with instant things you can have that are animal products. Because the big thing about a lot of the bad foods is they're very easy, instant, available, and you need to make sure that carnivore, or eating this way, or avoiding plants, or avoiding fruit, is convenient for you and pretty snappy as well. So if you feel a bit hungry now, and right now I could go down, I could have a boiled egg straight away. There's some bacon that's been fried up, there's a rump steak that's cooked. I could slice up, put into a frying pan. 4 minutes later, with a bit of butter and some salt, I've got a fantastic meal. And I think it's not just about the physiology. It's about your environment as well, and the people around you, having the support, feeling confident in what you're doing. There's so many different ways, but the bottom line is, eventually, that desire for the sugar does leave you, and the food freedom, which is a buzzword, but it's definitely something that more and more carnivores are aware of. It certainly comes to you. So you just feel like, wow, I'm not about food as much. I feel quite satiated. I feel really happy. I'm quite energetic. Everything's good.
What is the number one reason people come to you? What are they looking for? Weight loss, just eliminate a disease, eliminate their doctors. What do you think is the motivator?
Well, because of what I do, I think it's health. But sadly, there is a correlation between poor health and being overweight. So there will be this, I'd like to drop a few pounds, and a few pounds can be like 100 pounds. But I always say, put the brakes on and say, well, let's heal you first. And I have this conversation. I can hear myself now as I'm talking to you, having that conversation. Right, let's forget the weight loss for the moment. Let's talk about the health issues. Have a look at how we can deal with those first. And the body composition going the right way is a side effect of what you're doing. So don't make it a goal. Instead, make a commitment. There's a big difference. Commit to this way of eating. Commit to being a health round, and that way you actually take the pressure off yourself. You take your pressure off standing on the scale. And when the health benefits start kicking, it becomes easier, because all of a sudden it's like, wow, this is really good. I don't need my blood pressure meds anymore. This is amazing. And then the weight is a secondary thing.
And on those that stick to carnivore, have you seen anyone fail to lose weight, and or they gain weight significantly on carnivore?
Some gain weight initially. I got one person that's a bit problematic right now, actually, where they lose weight quite a bit, and then they'll gain a little bit back and be very demoralized by that. And understandably. because they can be really strict. But there's a few things going on, and I've asked to get a few labs and stuff like that because I just want to dive into what possibly could be happening. But I would say not many. I can't remember many people. I just have one that's recent, so
because we know the standard diet world of weight loss is a significant failure rate, and many people may lose weight initially, but then they quite often gain it back. Yet it seems if those that really stick to carnivore, and I guess the challenge is many people are carnivore but still eat some carbohydrates, so they're not really carnivore; they're an omnivore. And that if they're looking to lose weight or even lose some diseases, it's likely still the carbohydrates that they're eating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have this conversation because people say like fruits are natural. I'm like, well, they're not really. They're all hybrids, and they're not what they were 500 years ago. I think 500 years ago there wasn't such a thing as orange, for instance. It's crazy that people that fruit today is a natural food when it isn't. It's definitely been it's man-made to be more resilient and have more defenses and to be more sweet and more palatable and all those sort of things. But sadly, there's a lot of influence out there that wants you to still eat these things, and it's not helpful. It's certainly not helpful for people with cravings because it triggers cravings. Definitely does that. And people that are diabetic who are on continual glucose monitors, they have problems. Obviously, fructose doesn't show up on a glucose monitor, so that gets a bit of a free pass until you start getting into sort of the liver enzymes and those sort of things.
But if I ate fruit, if I eat fruit, is it also going to be converted to fat essentially? Because we're not building sugar stores. No one suddenly has a sugar store that's like, oh my God, you really got a lot of sugar in your body. That if your sugar levels are high, it's because you're not able to metabolize those sugars to something else, which is one thing. But essentially, it's our challenge is, and back to those people who are failing on weight loss. Do many of them who go carnivore but fail on weight loss still see the benefits in some way?
Yes, 100%. Absolutely 100%. I've not had one person say to me, this has been an abject failure from start to finish. Nothing has improved. That's never happened. It's frustration because for some people it's like a magic wand, and within 7 weeks I've had people off metformin and losing weight, and obviously those people go online, they get interviewed and they get a lot of traction because they are miraculous stories. Nobody's going to buy into a thumbnail on YouTube that says it took me 2 years to get really healthy, because it's not exciting. But there's a lot of those people where it's the long haul, and it takes a long time. If you've been eating the wrong way for 30 years, you can't expect 7 weeks to make a difference. Not to everybody. Yes, it has made a difference to some people, that miraculously. And a 30-day challenge is sort of proof of concept for most people. Within 30 days, something's happened that's good. Or conversely, flip it around. The bad things that used to happen aren't happening so much. So flare-ups on the skin or anxiety is one. Actually, we underestimate the mental benefits of this way of eating. People feel really calm in comparison to how they used to eat. Things that trip them up on day-to-day life, and let's be honest, the last couple of years have been very difficult for many people. They've handled those stressful situations better because it seems to have a huge impact on mental health. I think that's down to the systemic inflammation being sort of dampened down and feeding the brain properly, actually.
So the mental clarity is improved on carnivore, that also helps people get more motivated and to be able to handle the challenge that the carnivore is presenting for them.
Yeah, I always balk at the word proof because people don't like anecdotes, but thousands of people becomes data. It stops being anecdotes when you've got tens of thousands of people all saying the same thing.
Yeah, but there's only that one person that you're saying. So it's what did you call proof of concept? Is
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I like that.
yeah,
I like that.
yeah, yeah. If you see 500 people, 199 all say, "I feel calmer. I'm less stressed by everything." Well, it must be doing something in that region. It must be, but it's hard to prove that, isn't it? It's very hard to actually say, "Is this diet that's doing it?" Because you are an outside influence. People could say, "Well, it's because they're getting coached. It's because they're having a chat with someone." But I don't think that's the truth. I think it is just carnivore, because I used to chat with people when I was high carb, and I never saw the results. I never saw the weight loss. I never saw what I see now, because I'll be honest with you, when I was doing the personal training and I first started with the obesity thing, because I didn't know about low carb and keto, I felt a failure because I didn't buy into this, it's the person's fault, because everybody I met wanted to do something. And they're greedy, they're lazy, eat less, move more, and all that. It's flipping it around. It's taking the away from the food companies and these hyper palatable, awful processed foods, basically. And I didn't see the results. I just didn't see it, and I just thought, I know I'm doing the wrong thing. Well, this time, if anybody contacts me and they've got a list as long as your elbow, that all these different problems, I don't ever think, "Oh, this is going to be really tough." And I think, well, we're going to be able to help this person in some way, definitely.
So you notice the sense of how you feel to the problem, because before it was a challenge and you saw success, but it wasn't a simple formula like it is today, right? You're a science guy, right? You see the
Mm.
simple science in the methodology that you didn't see before. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. So, for instance, with the diabetic side of things, it's a no-brainer. The blood glucose management is easier. It just is, because the numbers are smaller and the spikes are less and the troughs are less. It's just absolutely nailed on, because now we have these wonderful continual glucose monitors, or we have people that just want to know for themselves, so they're doing on a regular basis. We even have the keto mojos, everything. So the data is out there, to the point actually where I've said to some people, "You're giving me too much. Come on, this is working. All right, don't keep doing this to yourself, because you're gonna run out of blood, basically." And it's there all the time. Whereas high carb, it's constant. Well, there's a bit of a spike there. You had to increase your dosage. What your dawn phenomena is triggering you as well, making you, you're not bringing those numbers down throughout the day. There was all of that was always going on, and always very frustrating, and it was never really the person's fault. And this is the thing, I still get this even in this space, where people will say, "Oh, I'm really fed up, Stephen. I genuinely haven't eaten any carbohydrates, but my blood sugar's still 110." And I'm like, well, that isn't that bad in the context of me seeing people when it's 200, 300. Let's get this into context. We're talking an extra 20th of a teaspoon compared to 100, and in the volume of things, is that bad? Are you stressed? There's many other reasons. So I think it's so explainable. It's this way of eating makes so much sense, and all the things that improve, it's common sense.
What are the things that are tripping people up, do you think? And maybe you could comment a little bit about when you hear the word fiber. Do some people still kind of think, well, I need my fiber, but I'm still carnivore? Maybe you could comment about that and the trip ups.
Yeah, well, a lot of people, I think I see, actually are quite well versed, and they know Dr. Paul Mason, and they know Zoe Harcum, and they know all the things. So it's not particularly difficult to talk about fiber in a way that's realistic. And I like to sort of appeal to people's common sense and say, well, look, did you have these when you were on a high fiber diet? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've had these problems all my life. So was fiber the answer, do you think? You just said you had a lot of fiber. Yeah, but it made me regular. I'm like, okay, well, but what is poop? So I get into all this sort of stuff. So what is poop? It's waste. It's what your body is not requiring. So yeah, if you eat something that's not digestible, not useful to you, of course that's going to end up in the toilet, but that doesn't improve things. So I think I sort of try to appeal to the thinking it through type of person where, oh, that makes sense. So if you eat something that you can utilize 100%, is that going to end up in the toilet? No, it's not going to make poop. So we do get the transitional problems, constipation and diarrhea come so often. And I often joke to say, if you're worried about diarrhea, I have many people that go the other way and then they've got constipation. You just got to find that happy medium, which is all about adaptation, really. But I think the fiber thing for me, I'm guessing you're asking because maybe it comes up more in your practice, doesn't tend to come up because I think most people are a bit more conversant now.
And I'm finding that still a lot of people, it's because we're seeing new people all the time to this experience, and it's still sort of, the carnivore is still a small kind of out there concept for most in the standard medical community. You're tending to get those people who are drawn to you because of that. They're not coming to me in general because I'm a keto or carnivore guy. They're coming to me because they want to get pregnant, have a baby. And so then you introduce these things, and I won't change my diet, but I'd do anything to have a baby. So those are the conflicts of all of this. Do you think that what is, do you think, the most harmful part of fiber? Do you think we could explain why fiber is in the gut is good or bad?
Well, it's not required. That's the thing. Now, the argument is that you get butyrate and it actually ferments in your colon, and the bacteria there love it. But of course, you can get isobutyrate from protein, and it comes from the blood side. It's not happening in your colon, so you're not getting all this fermentation in the colon.
Does fermentation only make butyrate? I've always asked that question. When a bacteria or yeast ferments sugars, is butyric acid the primary?
It's the one that sells. That's the thing that's talked about because it sells the idea of fiber.
Right, but they don't talk about alcohol, aldehydes, methane, gas, or heat, do they?
No.
Which is the killer part of that. So I've always found it interesting that we've talked about fiber, and then bacteria and yeast in our gut is good for us, and yet we talk about the theoretically good thing that somehow butyric acid is going into our bloodstream from the bowels. Have we?
Yeah.
Have we proved that?
Well, yeah. I mean, the blood supply of butyrate from protein is there, and it skips quite a few processes. So it can go into
the gut production of butyric acid is like it's in the colon, right? Because we don't want fermentation in the small intestine, do we?
No.
Is it happening there, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know that. I would hope not. I think when you look at when nurses talk about ostomy bags and colostomy bags, they always find plant material. They never find meat. So what happens in the small intestine stays in the small intestine. So if you're eating protein fats.
So maybe you can now lead us into the meat, and how did we get to this place that meat is the cause of cancer and in your colon?
Well, it's flawed interpretation of data. That there is no data that actually shows that, and I think that is a frustrating thing. Going back to what you said about the studies, you cannot take it apart. That actually makes you think, wow, there is a problem here. Quite the reverse, actually. There is more indication that eating this way is protective for colon cancer rather than damaging. I don't know the studies off the top of my head to quote because I read way too many of them every single day.
Yeah.
But I could pull them up if you wanted to. But there is just no evidence that that is the case. It's more to do with confirmation bias and adjusted figures. The statistical power is not there to actually prove there is any risk at all. And when you look at it, it's driven by ideology. It's not driven by science, sadly.
When, as you said, we have no requirement to eat carbohydrates and or plants. Is there a requirement to eat fat?
To eat fat? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yes, fats are cofactors in many processes in the body. Obviously, they go towards in hormones, which is pretty important. The lipid bilayer of every single cell membrane requires fat. So we need fats. If you don't eat enough cholesterol, your liver makes cholesterol. So I'm just using the common sense thing there. We need it for many things, neurotransmitters, the myelin sheath around all of your nerves. You require fat. So there are essential fatty acids that we absolutely definitely need for structure in the body. Also, they provide energy. So it's a good source of energy as well.
So essentially what you're saying and is that a fatty diet of meat and fat that comes with it is healthy and protective for us and not the cause of cancer or any known diseases that we take care of, which are the majority of the diseases are related to, you're saying, a carbohydrate plant-based diet.
Well, it does seem that way. Yes. I mean, if you look at all the modern diseases, it seems to correlate with the introduction of modern foods and the oversupply of carbohydrates. So we need amino acids. Where do you get amino acids from? Well, we get them from meat. Ted Naiman had a nice phrase where he said, the proteins in plants are really good at making plants, and the proteins in animals are really good at making animals, which again is a common sense argument. But everything that we look at is more bioavailable from animal sources, and certainly the fats are well tolerated. There's nothing to indicate that this way of eating is unsafe. And the more you speak to people in the space, heart surgeons, eye doctors, fertility specialists, mental health experts, that everywhere you look, there are people that are realizing that this is a very healthy way to eat. For those people that like that call to authority, like the MD and all that, there's plenty of people there, but also hundreds of thousands of real people are seeing resolution of illnesses they've been told are chronic and progressive, and they're not. They're regressing them. And they're not chronic, they're acute, and then they're not there at all. So all the things you're being told, and colon cancer being caused by red meat is one of those things from the ideology of them, from the science. It's just, that's a bit close to my heart, isn't it? Because my mum avoided all that and had colon cancer. And there's many people that get colon cancer that are not carnivore, that don't eat fats, don't eat meats. So if it was causal, they're the ones that get it and nobody else would. So vegans and vegetarians would have a 0% hit rate of colon cancer. Well, that's not the real world, is it? I mean, that happens.
And we really haven't seen any studies on carnivore only, because that when you'd really need to see the carnivore only, the meat only versus the plant only versus the combo. And if you're in the omnivore side or the herbivore side, because the real data on colon cancer is never related to just meat. It's always related to plants and meat. So just like if you're a smoker, it's going to increase your risk of lung cancer and other diseases at the same time.
Yeah. And the studies, I don't think I've ever said this. I actually volunteered to be in a study because I wanted to experience the process firsthand to see what was happening. And, I went along for the assessment to see whether I'd be a good participant for the study. And there was a food survey. And when it came to the meat section, I said, do you eat meat? And I actually asked the person that was adjudicating, well, can we split this up? They're like, no, you just press the button, it's meat. I said, well, does that mean if I eat hamburgers, that's going to be treated the same as if I eat a ribeye? Well, yes, meat. That was the answer. Yeah, it's meat. I'm like, well, they're very different. it was frightening actually to go through that. So I had to press meat. So I am there in the same category as someone that eats processed meats and hot dogs, is the same apparently as me who eats grass-fed ribeye, which is not being a snob, not being elitist. I am in that same category. Well, then you get into the, healthy lifestyles and the healthy user bias. So somebody that eats hot dogs, and sorry to paint this picture, is less likely to be health conscious in other areas like smoking, drinking, activity. Whereas someone that's, say, vegan, for instance, I know we knock vegans quite a bit. I don't personally, but I know people in this space do. At least they are looking at their health. So they're likely to be doing other things. They're likely to be not smoking. They're likely to be abstaining from alcohol. They're likely to be doing things, because you don't pick vegan because you don't care about your health. You think you're making a healthy choice. So you will change other activity and other things in your life. So it's a very muddled area. So you would need to actually have a cohort, which are people that are really serious about carnivore and everything that goes with it. Because I feel I don't meet many carnivores that say, well, I eat this way, but everything else is trash. They want to be outside, they want to be in touch with nature, they want to walk, move, they don't want to drink, they don't want to smoke, they still want to be sociable, which is obviously a good thing. So we are definitely a subset of people, definitely, but they're not involved in studies. Strange thing is, I was accepted for that study, but I realised that I would be, an outliner, because I didn't fit with everybody else that was in that room, because I was talking to everybody else in that room.
And when you do a study, ultimately, and this is what you would name a study of anything that proved something, and all the studies show the exact same thing.
Well, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
No.
So we almost waste our time on studies, in my opinion, because we're so ingrained to believe that they're going to answer the question. But ultimately, we haven't seen that in any area of medicine.
No, because the studies are just there to prove what the funding wants them to prove. That's the thing. So it's not about improving health, is it? So, I don't want to get too much into that, because, it's still very political, isn't it, going on?
Well, speaking of political in the spaces that we're all in, because we're now online and what you say is recorded. And do you think that there's we haven't really seen much backlash in this conversation? I think we're mostly seeing positive and growth from it, but there is still that little bit of the geopolitical and that wrestle between vegan, vegetarians, Mediterraneans, and sort of whatever. How's it been for you in this space?
Well, I'm not a big enough influencer yet to make people sit up and take notice. I mean, occasionally I will get a comment and you just think, that's crazy. I mean, one of the things that I've been looking at for about 3 years, which has been taken up by people like Ben Bickman, so I'm a little bit proud to do that, because one of the things, I did a video about HbA1c, which is the average of glycation of red blood cells, for people that don't know. And on carnivore, you can sometimes see that the daily blood glucose goes down, but the HbA1c goes up. And that does worry some people. So I started looking into this a few years ago. Now, when you're a phlebotomist, you're told about the HbA1c. Someone's hemolytic and their red blood cells don't live as long. They have a artificially low HbA1c. So you have to discount that because of that condition, and therefore you have to look at the diabetes risk, or the factors from their daily blood glucose, the fasting insulin, the fasted glucose, those sort of markers. Well, my way of thinking was, well, I'm now getting people coming in and they are measuring blood glucose daily. So we know this average isn't true, because they're coming in with their daily average from their actual blood. So there must be something flawed in the HbA1c. And therefore, it's possibly because the red blood cells live longer. But that would make total sense. If they die earlier in hemolytic patients, then you ignore it. If they live longer, then you should have to it. Well, that's now pretty much out there. People are talking about it because it doesn't make any sense compared to the actual blood readings that are daily. So that average is wrong. So anyway, I did a video about this, which is very reasoned with all the references, talking about the safety, that you still got to look at your fasting glucose, still got to look at your fasting insulin, you've still got to look at all these other markers. And I got remarks just saying, so you're out to kill people. At no point did I say ignore the HbA1c. It was, can we understand it in the text of what might be happening? And as long as these other markers are fine and your daily blood glucose is fine, you're possibly going to be misled by the HbA1c. But people just triggered straight away without even looking at the video. So if I have somebody comment, I rarely engage if someone's really negative, but if someone says something and it's, I don't know, challenging, or it's asserting something that I know isn't true, I will say, well, that's great. Well, point me to the study. Let me have a look at it. And they never reply.
That's part of the beauty, I think, though. It's meant to be collegial debates of conversations of all of this. And that's where we really want to be in the space, right? We want to make it that we can talk about opposite ideas. And I think you're doing an awesome job at that. And that's why I think, I've always respected your communication skills and making the story seem reasonable and easy to get to, because people need reasonable and easy to get to where they want to go. Because the thing about carnivore, it's really not hard, is it?
No, it's simple. I mean, you just eat meat and drink your water and have some eggs. I mean, it's really
and I'm sure you do the same thing. You ask people what they eat, what they ate last week, and I ask people their 5 or 10 things they eat, and it's usually healthy, organic, and clean. And then, well, I ate chicken and rice, and that was it. And yet, then when you dig deep and you ask, did you eat this, 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 the list climbs. Do you find the same thing in general? We just have a difficult time remembering what we ate.
Yes, categoric, absolutely categoric. And then if I have, a one-to-one that's not online, I will actually say, well, what do you eat? Let's go and look in your kitchen. Oh, wow. There's things in there. And I try to use humor, and I just say, so this is an exhibition of all this food, is it? You don't eat any of this.
Well, so maybe that's really part of the trouble. And how do you counsel people on that part of it? Because most of us have like so many things in our refrigerator and our cupboards that maybe we don't eat every day, but they're there. What is your advice for sort of clearing the field and getting right to the point?
Well, I think clearing the temptation is it's a no-brainer, really, because I will say it depends on the person. So in the main, I will say to somebody, look, that's there, right? If you wanted to eat it, you could eat that now. If it wasn't there, you'd have to get in your car and you have to go and get it. And by the time you've done that, well, you wouldn't want to be bothered to do that. So that would stop you eating that thing that you tell me you wish you could stop eating. So make it hard for yourself. Make it a trip. Make it an inconvenience rather than convenience food. And I think the other thing is talking about net benefits, because I will roll back to the reason they've seen me. So, for instance, say they're worried about being diabetic because, and this happened to my stepfather, by the way, so it's close to home. I don't want to have bits of me amputated because I'm diabetic. I've seen it happen to my brother, so I'm really worried. And I would, if someone needs something blunt, I'll say, well, look, is this worth eating? Because it cost you your big toe. I mean, is it a good trade? It really does depend, Rory, on how people receive the information, how they talk to me. So if someone's a numbers person, if I'll have a female that's done tons and tons of research, they want research. They want those sort of academic answers. But in the main, I do try to get it back to common sense and say, look, what have you been eating in the past that's got you to this state?
Okay.
And they'll list, well, it's the food that's in my kitchen that's problematic. I'm like, right, okay, you need to dump it. You need to get it out of your life, not make it convenient, and replace it. It's not about restriction. That's the other thing that this diet is not a restrictive diet. I think I eat more variety this way than everybody that tells me it's restrictive, who eats cereals every day, And I've
Yeah.
even had a very funny remark, which was, well, in the week I have healthy cereal, and at the weekend I have cereal that's not so bad, not so good for me. And I'm like, it's cereal. Have some bacon and egg, have, fish, have chicken, have, anything different. Just have some different things.
I found this on the web for cereal. Have some bacon, eggs, have chicken.
That's my.
Don't you love it when she does that?
Yeah. Actually, on Twitter, that voice of Siri, she follows me on Twitter. The voice.
That's good. I love it. I love it.
Anyway.
So fasting. What's your thoughts, your discussion with your clients on fasting, and how important is it or isn't it?
Well, I think fasting has its place. I mean, obviously, you're a big proponent of 1 meal a day, OMAD, so you are fasting for 23 hours of the day. I have a slightly different take to everybody else, I think, in the space, because I don't think of fasting and feasting or eating and then not eating, however you want to demarcate it. I think of us as being fueled. So when I eat my food, I don't then stop eating and think, right, now I'm fasting. I think now I'm fueled. That's it. And just like putting gas into an automobile, I'm now a certain amount of miles until I need refueling. I don't think, right, 3 hours. I just think, I'm fed, I'm fueled. That's it. I'm going to have a stop in 23 hours, 24 hours. If you're on 2MAD, obviously, I feel restricting your opportunities to eat is a good thing, because obviously you're keeping your insulin down, your inflammatory state is down. It's good for your digestive system to have a rest. So I feel it has its place, certainly therapeutically. If you've got a lot of body fat that you need to lose and you want to tap into that, I think fasting has its place. It's certainly is good for people, I think, for resolution of issues. I think if you've got eating disorders, some of you do need to give them a little bit more guidance, and they really need a lot of hand holding. But most people, even with eating disorders, are actually quite happy to have a look at fasting if it's suitable. I don't think it's essential. I don't think you have to do it. I do feel that you get more benefits when you do incorporate it. If you want quicker results, it's a really handy tool to see some body composition changes. But I think my biggest worry is people under, because that's when the crap comes back. So I want to make sure that when they do eat, they eat the appropriate amount for them and they don't actually undereat, because then I feel the cravings will be too strong.
So it's certainly not important to fast, whether it's the 23-and-1 or 16 and whatever. And so 3 meals a day, as our habits are, might be the first step for those people that are going carnivore, and they don't need to sort of change their eating habits, time of day, and things like that as they start.
Well, yeah, I'm a great believer in you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
But I think 3 meals a day could be problematic. I do feel that's possibly a bit too much frequency, but it has its place. For instance, if you've got a client that's had stomach surgery, they therefore can't eat as much. So then 3 meals a day is or possibly even more frequency with smaller meals. But in the main, I think that would possibly be a bit too much. The 3 meals, I don't feel you get the results as good as 2 meals a day or OMAD.
And the opposite of that is feasting. And I know that Raymond and you talk a lot about priming and really building it up and getting ready for a fast. Or do you think that's something that people should do more frequently?
Again, it's individual, but I definitely think if you want food freedom, if you come from a background of calorie restriction or reducing the amount of fats, your body's going to suck up all the things that it's been wanting for 30 years, 15 years,
Yeah.
however long you've been calorie restricted or fat restricted. It's going to love all that. I have personal experience of doing the 3 meals plus snacks thing when I deliberately gained weight to do the experiment back in May. And I went to town eating. I actually lost 4 pounds that week where I was doing 3 meals and snacks because I was eating the right food as opposed to the food that made me fat. So you have to judge each individual case and its merits and whether that person is really crazy. The biggest thing is the food freedom. I felt when people prime, they've come from a background, these people that have come from a background where they can't stop thinking about food. Within 9 days on average, people prime in, they say to me, I don't want to eat tomorrow. I don't want to eat. And I say, remember the last time you actually felt that? You fall to the point where you don't really want to eat? And they're like, no, not at all. And I tend to sort of visually just split the screen and say, look, so you've come from calorie restriction where you're constantly hungry, constantly thinking about food, where you're not eating enough, you never fall. And now you're on this side where you're eating plenty. You're not worried about calories. You're not restricting anything. You're eating to satiety. And just have decided that you don't want to eat lots. You've just decided. There's no willpower because your body is full. And it's beautiful. I like the way you're smiling there, but it's very interesting to see that penny drop when people go, wow, can't believe it. I'm always thinking about, or used to always think about, what was the next meal? When am I going to eat next? What we got in? What's for lunch? What's for dinner? I don't think like that anymore. Well, that's food freedom. And it's to get to that point.
Yeah, so so many of us, there's still a lot of keto in the world, but for many of us that, I still talk about keto because I know a lot of people still find their way there, but it's sort of the entry, it's the door to carnivore. And if we can get people there, and that is so important. Any particular lessons that you think are really important to share that you've learned from your clients on this journey?
Yeah, patience. I think that's the biggest thing. Just not thinking you're going to have a miracle in the first couple of weeks. It's going to be a bit of a rocky road for some people as they transition from eating the wrong way to eating these foods, because your body's got to adapt. It's got to get the stomach acid up, the bile production up. It's got to get used to processing amino acids. It's got to get used to processing fats. So it's not a walk in the park. I do think that a lot of people do immediately feel better, though. I mean, in saying that, so that's always good. When within 3 or 4 weeks, I will get many messages. I can't stop laughing thinking about it, because I will get that, wow, this is so good. Why have I not done this sooner? Those sort of messages all the time. But I've definitely learned patience is a thing, and understanding. I think the more people can understand what's happening and why it's happening, which is my big thing, to try and make it sort of plain English, layman's, but with analogies and metaphors, so people go, yeah, I really get that. I think that helps. Knowledge is very powerful for people to take, and the support systems there as well. I think there's a big community, so I suppose that's talked about very much is how isolated some people feel. They feel like, I'm the weird one. I can't go out because I don't eat veg, I don't eat bread or whatever, and people are going to look at me and think I'm odd. Don't make a big deal of it. Just eat your food. Just eat the food you want to eat. Just be the person that preaches and talks about it. Just get on with it. And within 6 months, normally, you the example, and people come to you and say, right, what are you doing?
What is Coach Steve? Oh, go finish up. I'm sorry.
But even at that point, when you tell them, you still might get people go, well, that can't be true. You will still get that. Even though they've come to you, said, you look amazing, what are you doing? The moment you tell them, there are enough people out there that have told me this, they then get that, well, that it can't be that. So, but don't be disheartened.
What does the UK Carnivore consume in a day in general?
Well, actually, I was just looking at the time. I have got a T-bone waiting right now. I'm pretty traditional. I quite like eggs and bacon at the moment. I'm having a renaissance with fried eggs. I was enjoying scrambled eggs. I try to include salmon and sea bass. I like scallops and prawns. I like a bit of food. That might be because up until the age of 50, I could not tolerate any fish whatsoever, and hospitalized twice with reactions to fish. So that's another thing that's happened with eating. My allergy absolutely plummeted. I used riddled with hay fever. So many wins, it's unbelievable. So yeah, I'm probably too mad at the moment. I do have decaf coffee. I very rarely get to drink it. I've got a cup there, but I haven't touched it. That's with a little beam. Yeah, it's quite varied. I have varied cuts, fillet steak. I like. We have a few stews with some inexpensive shin beef and stewing steaks. So yeah.
And how about
Lots.
alcohol? Do you touch alcohol at all? Do you do?
No.
What do you tell people about alcohol?
Well, it's not a health food. No one ever drinks alcohol for their health. I get why people like it, the social side of it, but I shoot from the hip and I say, oh well, I don't drink it because it's bad for you. If you have to drink it, because your boss is going to think you're weird because you're having water and you want to fit in with your work, I get that. But it's not something I would do. I would, I would just say I don't drink. But some people don't feel that confident. But as their journey progresses, they do become quite confident and they give it up.
Anything I haven't asked you that you think is important you wanted to share, or anything you wanted to ask me?
Well, I really laughed when I got the email about the interview. Is there anything that Robert didn't ask you that you'd like asked? And I'm thinking, I haven't done the interview yet. But it's a great question. No, because I know you, because I've spoken to you and you're in the meeting. So there's nothing too mysterious. I think what you're doing, you have a brilliant product of a person having a baby. Wow, what a gift to give to people, the ability to have a baby when they couldn't. So it's amazing. And I think in this space, I love what you do. I love you. You're very hardworking. You're out there, all the time doing the Instagram lives and stuff like that. I think that's, again, absolutely, love the content and what you're saying to people. I like the way you say it, like you as a person. And it's fabulous. And this is the thing. I didn't meet many people that were successful before I got into the low carb, then keto, then carnivore space, who are actually changing lives on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to ask you anything. I just wanted to say that. You can put that out there. I would love that to be out there. Questions? I don't have any questions. And there's nothing I wanted you to ask me.
But I think there was something you may have mentioned, and I wrote it down, about our genetic predisposition to diseases. Do you think that even as carnivores, you're going to get this no matter what? Or do you think we're changing the epigenetic evolution of our current lives and maybe our future lives and our children's children?
Well, yeah, I'll go a bit broader though, Robert, first, because this thing that genetics is the only cause of obesity is absolutely laughable. Absolutely laughable. Because I have people that are obese, they're not when they finish. So I haven't changed their genetics. I've changed what they eat. So diet definitely has a huge role. I mean, it is literally laughable that anyone can say it's nothing to do with diet, because it certainly is. Genetics play a role in more of an epigenetic environmental factor. I think I am using me as an example, but I think it's everywhere. You eat what your parents eat, pretty much what happens. So is it genetics, or is it the fact you inherit the eating patterns that you were given as a child? So I'm not overly hung up on genetics being the big cause of obesity. I'm more in environmental. And again, when you have, huge amounts of people from one particular area of the world who have uprooted and moved, and they didn't used to get those diseases and now they do, because they're living in a different environment, that's not a genetic change. That's an epigenetic environmental factor. So I think genetics is a little bit blown out of proportion. Epigenetics is definitely changing us, but I think, we're a blink of an eye, aren't we? This generation, 3 generations, blink of an eye. Maybe if we were in this way, with the processed foods for another 1,000 years, the body would have sorted out how to deal with it. I doubt that very much, personally, but who knows? That's a difficult one to answer, really.
So you might say the same thing goes with not just being overweight, but every disease we experience is really caused by our diet and less so anything else.
Yeah, I think if you fix the nutrition, that's basically what I see. That doesn't mean I don't recommend people get out more, see the sun more,
Yeah.
walk, be in touch with nature, all those sort of things. Social contact, laughing, having fun, just talking, all the things that make a big difference. But in the end, if your diet is good and on point, your quality of life is going to improve. But that doesn't mean ignore all the other things as well. I do think all those other things are important, making sure that you're in nature, getting outside, seeing the sun, exposing yourself to different environments, getting yourself nice and resilient, having a positive mental attitude, keep from the TV news, all those sort of things, I think will make a big difference too.
So there's a lot of pearls that we can gain from your advice. Where do people find you?
I'm here. Right. So I have a website, the ukcarnivore.com. Really simple. Instagram again, UK Carnivore. That's how you can contact me, or my email, zerocarbcoach@gmail.com. I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah, you're amazing. One other question about exercise, any exercise, how important is it as a component of the healthy living and healthy lifestyle?
Exercise is like the butter on the steak. That's what I say. It's not essential. It's definitely optional, but you're going to feel better if you move. That's without a shadow of a doubt. Biomechanically, we're designed to move. Doing the right exercise and the right amount. As a personal trainer, I think when people get into it, the biggest problem I have is dialing them back and stopping them from overtraining because they feel so good. So we have to factor in rest and recovery, which sounds odd when you're talking about exercise, but it's all about the training response. So if you work hard for 20 minutes in the gym, you need to rest and recover. We talked about sport earlier. If you've got a favorite football team and suddenly you found out that they are playing a big match every single day for the next year, you could bet your bottom dollar that halfway through that they'll all be injured or their performance terrible because they've not rested and they've not recovered. So I think rest and recovery is underestimated, physiological response to it. I think all the post and pre-workout shake that are only really pushed by people that sell post and pre-workout shakes. You don't need all that stuff. Drinking too much water is a big problem. Make sure your urine. So all of those things that tend to be wrapped up in exercise, drinking tons of water and all that, I try to get people out of that and listening to their thirst. So it's the same principle as eating when it comes to exercise, to listen to your body, to push it and stop it needs to be stopped. So I do a recommendation of like 3 times 20 maximum, but to fatigue, really work out very hard, then rest and recover. Make sure that you eat enough. I don't feel that you need to have tons and tons of equipment. You can do body weight exercises. You can sprint in the park. Sprinting is really good. Anything that's short, sharp, and explosive. But be specific to what your aims are. So if you want to be a 26-mile marathon runner and a superstar, that's what you need to train for. You don't need to be in the gym. You need to be running. If you want to gain some muscle, and look at your longevity and your bone density, for instance, then probably strength training is the best thing. Most people I see don't want to be marathon runners, and they do the running for the wrong reason. They do it to lose weight. And I say, do you enjoy it? And they're like, don't enjoy it. Right. Okay. Well, let's not run. Let's go in the gym. Let's do some sprints in the park or something. But, work out to your goal really, rather than because somebody said this insane workout is really good.
And for a lot of people, walking is really good. Getting out, as you said, And one of those that aren't interested in building bulk in their muscles, but they just want to keep the tone. Is lighter weights okay?
Well, it depends on your sex and your lifestyle and your shape, because some people will put on muscle easier than others, which is the thing that makes many people jealous who want to gain the muscle and can't.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of lightweights.
Okay.
I feel you'll get more from actually making a difference. If I was to pick up this pen, which is light, I'm only using this as a silly example, and I did a bicycle, my central nervous system is never going to pick up that we need to do something to make this movement more efficient. We need to build bigger muscles. We need to build better joints. We need to get the motor neurons there. We need to more activation. You pick up a heavy weight, your central nervous system, boom, it's going to listen. So I think light weights, you tend to then get into endurance. And if you think of what a marathon runner and a sprinter does, so a sprinter is short, sharp, intensive, explosive movements, and looks pretty awesome. Or like a diver, someone, or a swimmer, they look pretty good. Most people like the way they look. Marathon runner, not so much. Most, look a bit underfed.
Yeah.
Well, what they're doing when they do their 26 miles or their endurance training is they're teaching their body to get this body, which has a finite storage of energy, and to slowly release it. That's what you're training your body to do, to slow your metabolic rate down, to give you energy to last for 26 miles. So you slow your metabolic rate down and you don't look great. Or you could lifting weights or doing something explosive, really good, because you're teaching your body to be big and explosive, and fast and, dynamic. So I think what you want out of your training is really important, rather than what's the best sort of training.
Right. So if you want to be a marathon runner, then you're going to go to that long, low, and slow potential. But really, if you want the real fitness, you have to give a little bit of resistance to those muscles to get them to build a little bit more.
Yeah.
And the fight or flight is probably more valuable than the long distance run anyway, because if you need to move quickly, you've got that because you've trained for it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
It's really been a pleasure, Stephen. Thank you for joining me today. And I know we got a chance to catch back up, and always love listening to you. And you have a calm way of presenting the information that really is easy for people to listen to and handle. I sometimes can be a little loud, and I got to practice.
Well, I think you're great. I like what you do.
God bless you. Thank you. No, I enjoy it too. I am off coffee now, and which has really been fantastic feeling. I haven't tried decaf back again. I just kind of love the feeling that it's no longer pulling me. That's the one thing to kind of to let go of those addictions, that there's the puller, right? And the same thing, again, carbohydrates and alcohol and any of those other things. It's really important to find your strength in food freedom.
Yes. Yeah. Well, my coffee's here, mate. That was serious. Look at that. Not touch.
Well, that again, I don't think some coffee, even coffee with caffeine from time to time, and I think it's just each person has to find the thing and where they're at, wouldn't you say, at the moment?
Yeah, and I think one of the things about coffee, and I'll have to go in a second, Robert, by the way.
I got to go
too. Is what does it replace? You see, if someone says, I get up in the morning and I walk barefoot and I go down to the bottom of the garden and I sit at the bottom of the garden and I have a cup of coffee and I just look at nature, and I say, well, what would you do if you didn't have coffee? Well, I'd stay and I'd eat rubbish. Then coffee wins. Simple as that. For that lifestyle at that moment. And, my back, right, maybe we'll come back to that. Maybe we'll look at that. It's all about the quality of life, isn't it? And I enjoy coffee, but I know caffeine is not good for me. But decaf, I tolerate quite well.
Pretty good. Good. Well, awesome. Well, God bless, and thank you for joining me today.
Brilliant.
I appreciate it. Always good. Always
Speak
good. All right. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. That was really a wonderful podcast, and thanks for joining. And don't forget to check out drkiltz.com and Kiltz's Mighty Tribe. And the 30-day carnivore course, which we're still offering, the special included is Kiltz's Keto is carnivore and the daily inspirations, digital format. So again, thank you for being here. Dr. Rob Kiltz, bless, be well, God bless.